The Echoes of Willow Creek. Chapter 1. The Return to Willow Creek. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the rolling hills of Willow Creek. The small town hadn't changed much in the 30 years since Jack Thompson had left. The same old diner still stood on the corner, its neon sign flickering faintly, and the town square was still adorned with the same weathered gazebo where countless summers had been celebrated. Jack stepped out of his rental car, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. He took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scent of pine and earth. Coming back wasn't easy. He'd spent decades building a life far away from this place. A life filled with boardrooms and skyscrapers, not the quiet simplicity of a small town. But his father's passing had brought him back, and now, as the sole heir to the family farm, he had decisions to make. The farmhouse stood at the end of a long, winding driveway. Its white paint was peeling, and the porch sagged slightly under the weight of time. Jack's chest tightened as he approached. Memories flooded back, his mother's laughter echoing through the kitchen, his father's stern but loving presence, and the night spent stargazing in the fields. He stepped inside, the floorboards creaking beneath his feet. The house was exactly as he remembered it, frozen in a time long gone. A layer of dust covered the furniture, and the air was thick with the scent of nostalgia. Jack dropped his suitcase by the door and wandered into the living room. His eyes fell on the old piano in the corner, the one his mother used to play. He ran his fingers across the keys, the sound ringing out in the silence. As the sun set, Jack sat on the porch, a cup of coffee in hand. The farm stretched out before him, vast and untouched. He knew he couldn't ignore the past any longer. The answers to the questions that had haunted him for years were buried here, in the soil and the stories of Willow Creek. Chapter 2. Faces from the Past. The next morning, Jack woke to the sound of birds chirping outside his window. The farmhouse felt less eerie in the daylight, though the weight of the past still lingered. He decided to head into town, hoping to reconnect with old faces and gather his thoughts. Maggie's diner was just as he remembered, narrow and lined with quaint shops. He spotted Maggie's diner and felt a pang of nostalgia. Maggie had been his mother's best friend, and her diner had been a second home to him as a child. He pushed open the door, the bell jingling softly. "Well, I'll be damned," a voice called out. Jack turned to see Maggie herself, her hair now streaked with gray, but her smile as warm as ever. "Jack Thompson, is that really you?" "Hey, Maggie," Jack said, smiling as she hurried over to hug him. "It's been too long," she said, pulling back to look at him. "What brings you back to Willow Creek?" "My dad's passing," Jack replied, his voice heavy. "I'm here to settle things with the farm." Maggie's expression softened. "I'm so sorry, Jack. Your dad was a good man. He talked about you all the time, you know, always so proud of you." "I wish I'd come back sooner." Maggie patted his arm. "You're here now. That's what matters. Sit down. Let me fix you some breakfast." As Jack ate Maggie's famous pancakes, the diner began to fill with familiar faces. Old classmates, neighbors, and even the town's mayor stopped to say hello. It was overwhelming, but also comforting. Willow Creek was still a tight-knit community, and Jack had been missed. Among the visitors was Sarah Bennett, Jack's high school sweetheart. She looked older, of course, but her kind eyes and radiant smile were the same. "Jack," she said, her voice soft, "it's good to see you." "Sarah," he replied, standing to hug her. "You look amazing." "Oh, stop. I'm just a simple teacher now. But you've done so well for yourself. We've all heard about your success in the city." I shrugged. "It's not all it's cracked up to be." "Well, if you're sticking around, maybe we can catch up properly. There's a lot to talk about." "I'd like that," Jack said, feeling a spark of something he hadn't felt in years. As the morning turned into afternoon, Jack found himself walking through the town square with Sarah. They reminisced about their childhood, the dreams they'd had, and the paths they had taken. It was bittersweet, but it also reminded Jack of why he had loved this place so much. But not everything was sunshine and smiles. As they passed the old library, Sarah hesitated. "Jack, there's something I should tell you. About your dad." Jack frowned. "What about him?" Sarah took a deep breath. "He wasn't just a farmer, you know. He was involved in something big. I don't know all the details, but rumors have been swirling for years. I think it's why he kept to himself so much." Jack's heart raced. What kind of rumors? "About money, a family feud, and even illegal dealings," Sarah said, her voice low. "I don't know what's true, but I thought you should know." Jack's mind was reeling. His father had always been a man of few words, but Jack had never suspected anything like this. "Thanks for telling me," he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. As the day ended, Jack returned to the farmhouse, his thoughts a jumble of emotions and questions. There was more to his father's story than he had ever known. Chapter 3. Unearthing Secrets. The next few days were a blur for Jack. He spent his mornings sorting through his father's belongings in the farmhouse and his afternoons exploring the property. The farm was vast, with fields stretching as far as the eye could see, and Jack was determined to understand every inch of it. In the attic, he found an old trunk tucked away in the corner. It was dusty and worn, but the lock was still intact. Jack brought it down to the living room and searched for a key. After rummaging through drawers and cabinets, he finally found it in his father's desk, hidden beneath a stack of yellowed receipts. He unlocked the trunk and lifted the lid, his heart pounding. Inside were stacks of old letters, photographs, and a leather-bound journal. Jack picked up the journal and flipped through the pages. It was filled with his father's handwriting, neat and precise, but with an urgency that Jack had never seen before. The entries dated back decades, chronicling not just the daily workings of the farm, but something darker. There were mentions of the deal, the family, and the consequences. Jack's hands trembled as he read his father's words. "I never wanted this for us. I thought I was protecting the family, but now I see I've only brought more pain. The truth will come out one day, and I can only hope Jack will be strong enough to face it." Jack closed the journal, his mind racing. What had his father been involved in? And why had he kept it a secret all these years? Determined to find answers, Jack decided to visit the local library. The old building was quiet, with the smell of aged paper filling the air. He approached the librarian, a kind older woman named Mrs. Hargrove, and asked if she could help him find any records about his family. "The Thompsons have been in Willow Creek for generations," Mrs. Hargrove said, leading him to a section of yellowed newspapers and old land deeds. "They've always been a respected family, but—" "But what?" Jack pressed. Mrs. Hargrove hesitated. "There were rumors, of course, about your grandfather and his brothers. They were involved in some questionable dealings back in the day. Bootlegging, some said. Others claimed it was something even bigger." Jack's stomach churned. "Do you have any proof?" She shook her head. "Just stories, but stories have a way of sticking around in small towns." Jack spent hours poring over the records, piecing together fragments of his family's history. He learned about his grandfather's rise to prominence in the 1920s, a time when Willow Creek was booming. But there were gaps, periods of time when the family's wealth seemed to explode inexplicably. As he left the library, Jack felt more lost than ever. The pieces of the puzzle were there, but they didn't quite fit. He needed to talk to someone who had been around back then, someone who might know the truth. That evening, he drove to the outskirts of town, where Old Man Grady lived. Grady had been a friend of his grandfather's, and if anyone knew the family's secrets, it was him. Grady was sitting on his porch when Jack arrived, a shotgun resting across his lap. He smiled when he saw Jack, revealing a row of yellowed teeth. "Jack Thompson," Grady said, his voice gravelly, "I've been expecting you." "You have?" Jack asked, surprised. "Your father called me a week before he passed. He said you'd come asking questions. He wanted me to tell you the truth." Grady took a deep breath. "Your family wasn't perfect, son. Your grandfather made some poor choices, and your father paid the price. There was a feud with another family, the Carters. It started over land, but it escalated into something much worse. People died, Jack, and secrets were buried." Jack's jaw tightened. "What kind of secrets?" Grady looked Jack in the eye. "Money. A lot of money. It's still out there, hidden somewhere on your property, but it comes with a price. Your father tried to protect you from it, but now it's your burden to bear." Jack leaned back, his mind racing. The journal, the rumors, and now Grady's words. It was all connected. But how far was he willing to go to uncover the truth? Chapter 4. The Hidden Legacy. The following morning, Jack woke up with Grady's words echoing in his mind. "There's money hidden on your property, but it comes with a price." He couldn't shake the feeling that his father's secrets were closer than ever. After a quick breakfast, Jack grabbed a shovel and a flashlight and headed to the old barn at the edge of the property. The barn had been abandoned for years, its wooden planks warped and faded. If there was something hidden on the farm, this seemed like the most logical place to start. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the faint scent of hay lingered. Jack scanned the space, looking for anything out of the ordinary. His eyes fell on a loose floorboard near the corner. He knelt down and pried it open, revealing a small, rusty box. His heart raced as he pulled it out and opened it. Inside were stacks of old, faded bills, hundreds of them, maybe even thousands. But beneath the money was a folded piece of paper. Jack unfolded it carefully and saw his father's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm either gone or too weak to protect you. This money isn't ours. It belongs to the Carters, and it's the source of the feud that's haunted our family for generations. I thought I could end it, but I was wrong. I've hidden the rest of the truth in the old well. Be careful, Jack. Some secrets are better left buried." Jack's hands trembled as he read the note. The Carters. He remembered hearing about them growing up. They'd been a prominent family in Willow Creek until they'd mysteriously left town decades ago. Now he understood why. He pocketed the money and the note, his mind racing. The old well was deep in the woods, a place he'd been warned to avoid as a child. But he had no choice. He needed to know the truth. The woods were dense, the sunlight barely piercing through the canopy of trees. The old well was just as he remembered it, a crumbling stone structure surrounded by overgrown bushes. Jack hesitated for a moment before peering inside. It was dark, the bottom invisible. He tied a rope to a nearby tree and began to descend, his flashlight clutched tightly in his hand. The air grew colder the deeper he went, and the smell of damp earth filled his nostrils. When he reached the bottom, he found a small alcove carved into the stone wall. Inside was a metal box much like the one he'd found in the barn. He opened it and found more money, along with a stack of old photographs and letters. The photographs showed his grandfather with a group of men, including whom he assumed was a younger version of Mr. Carter. The letters were filled with accusations and threats detailing a feud that had spiraled out of control. As Jack read through the letters, a chilling realization dawned on him. The feud wasn't just about money, it had been about power. His grandfather had betrayed the Carters, and in doing so, he had doomed both families to a legacy of mistrust and violence. He climbed out of the well, the weight of his discovery heavy on his shoulders. He didn't know what to do with the money or the truth, but he knew one thing: he couldn't keep it buried. When he returned to the farmhouse, he found Sarah waiting for him on the porch. She looked worried. "Jack, where have you been?" she asked. "I found something," he said, his voice low. "Something that changes everything." He showed her the money, the note, and the letters. Sarah's eyes widened as she read through them. "This is incredible," she said. "But what are you going to do?" Jack sat down, his mind racing. "I don't know, but I can't keep this to myself. The Carters deserve the truth." Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're a good man, Jack. Whatever you decide, I'll stand by you." For the first time in years, Jack felt a sense of clarity. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face it, for himself, for his father, and for the legacy he'd inherited. Chapter 5: The Final Reckoning. The next morning, Jack woke up with a plan. He spent hours researching the Carters, tracking down their descendants. The family had scattered across the country after leaving Willow Creek, but he eventually found a lead: a man named James Carter, the grandson of the man his grandfather had betrayed. Jack reached out to him, arranging a meeting in Willow Creek. The idea of facing the Carters was daunting, but he knew it was the right thing to do. When the day of the meeting arrived, Jack waited nervously at the farmhouse. Sarah had offered to be there with him, and he was grateful for her support. A car pulled up the driveway, and a man stepped out. James Carter was in his 50s, with sharp features and a guarded expression. He approached the porch cautiously, his eyes scanning the property. "You're James Thompson?" James said, his voice neutral. "I am," Jack replied. "Thank you for coming." James nodded. "You said you had something important to discuss?" Jack gestured to the porch chairs. "Let's sit down." The three of them sat in silence for a moment before Jack began to speak. He told James everything about the money, the feud, and the letters he'd found. He showed him the photographs and the notes, watching as James' expression shifted from skepticism to shock. When Jack finished, James sat back, his face pale. "I always knew my grandfather left because of something bad, but I never imagined this," he said quietly. "I'm sorry," Jack said sincerely. "I didn't know any of this until recently, but I want to make it right. The money belongs to your family, and I'd like to return it." James hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "Why now? Why you?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Jack replied, "and because my father wanted it to end with him. I'm just finishing what he started." James studied Jack for a moment, then sighed. "You're not your grandfather, Jack. I can see that. I don't know if this changes anything, but I appreciate the gesture." Sarah spoke up then. "Maybe this is a chance for both families to move forward, to leave the past behind." James nodded slowly. "Maybe. It won't be easy, but it's a start." Over the next few hours, the three of them talked about the past, the present, and the future. By the end of the conversation, James agreed to take the money and the letters, not as a victory, but as a step toward healing. As James drove away, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a beginning. Later that evening, he and Sarah sat on the porch watching the sun set over the fields. "What now?" Sarah asked. Jack smiled. "I'm not sure yet, but I think I'd like to stay here for a while. Maybe fix up the farm, start fresh." Sarah grinned. "I think that's a great idea." For the first time in years, Jack felt at peace. The echoes of the past still lingered, but they no longer controlled him. He'd faced the truth, made amends, and found a path forward. Willow Creek had always been his home, and now it always would be.